The rule makes in order H.R. 3684, the Democrats' retread of last year's Green New Deal. Only this time it's now disguised as infrastructure. Instead of working with Republicans to provide desperately needed infrastructure investment, House Democrats doubled down on the same mandates, the same restrictive policies, and the same social justice warrior priorities that failed to go anywhere last year. This partisan package spends nearly $548 billion on progressive priorities and programs while actually restricting new road and bridge construction. That's right, it actually restricts new construction of roads and bridges. When we talk about the money, like I said, it's about $550 billion. That is an 11% funding increase over last year's bill and a whopping 79% increase over the bipartisan FAST Act, the last surface transportation reauthorization bill that was passed by this chamber. Alarmingly, but not surprisingly, this bill was not paid for. So then where does the money come from? Well, the answer is simple: deficit spending. Deficit spending, which further fuels inflation and increases the cost of things like gas and food that all American families need. Simply put, every American will pay more for everything to meet the demands of the Democrats' far-left radical base. You would hope that with a price tag like this, with an impact on American families like this, that the bill would actually provide for massive investment to fix our nation's crumbling roads and bridges. But you'd be wrong. H.R. 3684 puts climate and the Green New Deal above real infrastructure needs. In fact, up to $1 out of every $2 spent in this bill is tied up in Green New Deal mandates. This bill puts up roadblocks for transportation and also puts up roadblocks for transporting clean-burning, affordable LNG, obviously liquefied natural gas, which is another blow to blue-collar workers already devastated by Joe Biden's war on American energy and his war on blue-collar workers. In focusing on this radical far-left priority, the majority has failed to include the regulatory reforms necessary to address money-wasting permitting delays that currently plague critical infrastructure projects. Think about it. Right now, it takes 6 years on average just to break ground on major public projects. 6 years. An average of 20 to 30% of infrastructure project costs are lost to red tape. This costs real money. This means that about $164 billion in this bill will actually just be wasted on red tape and project delays. But that's not even the most egregious example of wasteful spending in this legislation. This bill lifts a bipartisan ban and allows the Federal Transit Administration to spend money on art. That's right. According to liberals across the aisle, art is now infrastructure. America's taxpayer dollars clearly hard at work, and clearly liberal newspeak, Orwellian newspeak, on display calling art infrastructure. Finally, the bill favors big urban areas to the detriment of smaller rural communities like the ones I represent in southwestern Pennsylvania. H.R. 3684 prioritizes funding for urban transportation modes like transit and rail over roads and bridges that everyday Americans use. In fact, more money is given to electric vehicle charging stations than to the entire Rebuild Rural Grant Program. I'd also be remiss if I failed to point out that those very same electric vehicles cannot be built without critical minerals from China. China, of course, the world's #1 polluter. So where are the climate priorities? Where are the environmental priorities that my colleagues on the liberal side of the aisle claim that they actually care about? At the end of the day, the Democrats are prioritizing their fantasy of the Green New Deal over traditional concepts of actual infrastructure. My colleagues across the side of the aisle, the Liberal Party, has chosen to bow down to the woke mob that they're terrified of. They've chosen to prioritize woke liberal yuppies over rural America and blue-collar workers that actually work for a living.